Welcome to the second video in our series about effective vocabulary instruction. In this video, we will explain how instruction to pre-teach vocabulary is different from the one that aims to help students develop deducing meaning from context skill. By the end of this video, you will be able to first explain the features of pre-teaching vocabulary and deduce meaning from context instruction. Second, choose suitable vocabulary for pre-teaching and deducing meaning from context. Third, avoid common misconceptions about pre-teaching of vocabulary and deducing meaning from context instruction. First, we will explain the key features for each type of instruction. Then we will summarize and compare them. Let's start with pre-teaching vocabulary. So, what exactly is vocabulary pre-teaching? According to Chong in 2017, pre-teaching vocabulary refers to the process of introducing specific words to students before they encounter a task, such as reading, listening, or a collaborative activity that involves speaking or writing. Pre-teaching vocabulary facilitates the reading of new text by giving students the meanings of the words before they encounter them. This practice reduces the number of unfamiliar words encountered and facilitates greater comprehension. This technique is often used in receptive skills lessons, such as reading and listening, though it can also be applied in speaking and writing tasks. For example, in a speaking task, we might give learners the opportunity to negotiate meaning first and only provide the necessary vocabulary when gaps are noticed. It's important to note that pre-teaching is not the main event. The focus is on helping students complete the primary task effectively by giving them the language tools they need in advance. So, how do we decide which words to pre-teach? The first key framework comes from Beck and colleagues, 1987-2002. They categorize vocabulary into 3 tiers. Tier 1 consists of everyday words like dog and run, words students already know well. These words are so common that students naturally encounter them frequently, both in written and spoken language. For this reason, Tier 1 words generally don't require explicit instruction in school. Tier 3 includes highly specialized words like filibuster or epidermis. They are subject-specific terms. These words, while not common in everyday conversation, are critical for understanding concepts in specialized academic areas. For instance, a term like cellular response is crucial for students studying high school science, even though it's rare in everyday language. Some Tier 3 words are so rare they are unlikely to require direct instruction unless they are relevant to a particular subject. But it's Tier 2 that deserves our focus. These are high-utility words, words like contradict or circumstances, that students may encounter across a wide range of contexts, but are less likely to learn on their own. This categorization of vocabulary is based on the fact that not all terms in the English language should receive equal consideration from an instructional perspective, since a large proportion of terms are not very frequently encountered in typical reading. Next, let's explore a systematic approach for teachers to identify key lexical items that are worthy of explicit attention by Newton et al. Eds in 2018. This approach was introduced with a view to help teachers make judicious decisions when it comes to vocabulary selection. This approach ensures that vocabulary instruction is both targeted and beneficial for learners' overall language proficiency. This table provides a clear, systematic way for teachers to identify which vocabulary items should receive explicit attention during instruction. Let's break it down. The first evaluation criterion is whether a word or phrase is critical for text comprehension. Here, A+ means the word is essential to understanding the text, while A means it's not that important for comprehension. Teachers can use the standards being mapped to each lesson objectives to narrow down the scope of comprehension. For example, if the mapped standard of the lesson is 5RD.01, understand most specific information and detail in short texts, then vocabulary that helps students understand specific information is essential. However, if the mapped standard is 5row.01, recognize the opinions of the writers in short texts, words that help students to identify the author's opinion are of utmost importance. The second criterion is whether the word or phrase is useful beyond the text being read. A plus here means the word is valuable in other contexts, and a minus means it's mostly relevant to this specific text and not widely applicable elsewhere. To evaluate this criterion, teachers can combine their own judgment with results from word frequency or word level checking tools. For example, teachers can use the website www.oxford3000.com to determine the CEFR level of each word. This site provides access to the Oxford 5000 list, a collection of words selected based on their frequency in the Oxford English corpus and their relevance for English learners. Each word is aligned with the CEFR, helping guide learners on vocabulary appropriate for levels A, 1 to C1. Based on these two criteria, the table categorizes vocabulary into different priority levels for instruction. Plus plus means the word is both essential for understanding the text and useful beyond it. These words should be given high priority for explicit instruction. Plus minus indicates that the word is crucial for text comprehension but may not be very useful in other situations. It still deserves attention but with lower priority. Minus plus means the word isn't necessary for this specific text but will be useful in other contexts. It might not be necessary to teach students in class. Finally, minus minus refers to words that are neither critical for understanding the text nor particularly useful beyond it. These words can be skipped over in terms of explicit instruction. This approach helps teachers focus their efforts on the vocabulary that will have the biggest impact on students' learning, making instruction more effective and purposeful. So in both of these two frameworks, it can be seen that when choosing vocabulary to pre-teach, familiarity and utility are the two main factors to be considered. The goal is to target words that will be most useful for students in a variety of contexts and that they are less likely to encounter on their own. The following checklist is synthesized from the two frameworks above to help teachers identify vocabulary items that deserve class time. Answering the questions will help teachers to select suitable vocabulary to pre-teach. Category 1, Importance for Comprehension. Does this word support the specific lesson objectives or standards? Does this word relate meaningfully to other vocabulary or topics students have learned or are currently studying? Category 2, Usefulness beyond the text. Is this word relevant across multiple contexts? Do students already have ways to express the concepts represented by the word? Is this word specific to a subject area? What is the CEFR level of the word? Category 3, Other Consideration. How much time in the period lesson can be allocated to vocabulary instruction? So the key takeaway here is teach for need, not for every word. Teachers should focus on vocabulary that aligns with lesson goals and empowers language development. So what are the steps to pre-teach vocabulary? To select vocabulary for pre-teaching, teachers should begin by previewing the text, audio, or topic to identify key words. The checklist provided earlier can help guide this selection process. It's also important for teachers to be mindful of the time available for pre-teaching. Presenting too many words without proper context can make them feel like a random list rather than meaningful vocabulary. Next, teachers should focus on aspects of vocabulary knowledge that align with the lesson objectives, as discussed in Video 1. Finally, during instruction, teachers should provide a student-friendly definition of each word and use it in a sentence to clarify its meaning in context. The three key words for this process is prioritize, contextualize, maximize. That's all for the first part of our video. Now let's move to part 2, features of deducing meaning from context. In reality, students are very likely to not know all the words presented to them in a reading passage. While they can take advantage of a dictionary or ask their friends, in many situations, they can only rely on themselves to figure the words out, like when they sit a test, for example. Luckily, we can teach them one useful skill that is deducing meaning from context. What does deducing meaning from context mean? According to Cambridge, deducing meaning from context means to guess the meaning of an unknown word by using the information in a situation and/or around the word to help. There is deducing meaning from context in both the reading and listening strand are ESL standard set for each stage. For example, in Stage 6, Standard 6RD.04 in Reading for Detail substrand is deduce a meaning from context, with support in short and extended text. The Standard 6L.03 in the Listening for Detail substrand is deduce it meaning from context, with support in short and extended talk. So what is a contextual clue? To answer this, let's first explore the term context. According to Beck, 2002, when we talk about deducing meaning from context, we identify two main types: instructional contexts and naturally occurring contexts. Instructional contexts are deliberately created to provide strong clues to a word's meaning, helping learners grasp new vocabulary more effectively. On the other hand, naturally occurring contexts come from prose that authors craft to tell stories or convey information. In these situations, the author's primary goal is to create engaging prose rather than provide explicit context clues. As a result, the amount of information these natural contexts provide about a given word can vary widely. This variability leads to the conclusion that instruction should focus on the process of figuring out word meanings within contexts, rather than merely delivering a final definition. Next, let's delve into the different types of context clues, which can be categorized into internal clues and external clues. According to Furkink, 2005, internal clues include aspects such as morphological word formation, while external clues rely on the context surrounding a word. Starting with internal clues, we can identify several key components. Free morphemes are words that can stand alone. Examples include book, happy, and cat. Bound. Morphemes, in contrast, cannot stand alone and must attach to free morphemes. For instance, the prefix -un in unhappy or the suffix -tida in cats. Roots are the core parts of words that carry the main meaning. For example, act appears in words like action, react, and actor. Affixes are morphemes that modify the meaning of a root word. They include prefixes, which are added to the beginning of a root. For example, dis in disagree. Suffixes, which are added to the end of a root. For example, ness in happiness. Inflection refers to a morphological process that changes a word to express different grammatical categories, such as tense or number. For instance, the word talk can take various forms: talks, third person singular, talked, past tense, and talking, present participle. 6. Allomorphs are variants of a morpheme that appear in different contexts but have the same meaning. For example, the plural morpheme in English can be represented as is in cats, z in dogs, is in buses. 7. Blending is the process of merging parts of two words to form a new word. For example, brunch is blended from breakfast plus lunch, smog is blended from smoke plus fog. 8. Compounding is the process of combining two or more free morphemes to create a new word. For example, toothbrush is combined from tooth and brush, basketball is combined from basket and ball. 9. Clipping is the shortening of a longer word resulting in a new word, often in a more casual form. For example, Ad from advertisement, lab from laboratory. 10. Back formation is the process of creating a new word by removing a real or supposed affix from another word. For example, edit from editor, televise from television. 11. Derivation is the creation of a new word by adding prefixes or suffixes to a root or base word, often changing its grammatical category. For instance, from the noun beauty derive the adjective beautiful. From the verb educate, derive the noun education. Now let's move on to external clues. External context clues encompass both linguistic and non-linguistic information surrounding an unfamiliar word, which readers can use to infer its meaning. Bauman, 2005. For linguistic information, we can refer to a list synthesized by Sassow, 2013, which details various types of external clues and the signs that indicate them. Direct description includes mean, is, or that is. The next one is indirect description. For contrast or comparison, students can look for words like but, however, or in contrast. Synonym clues are words such as to, also, or a similar sentence structure. About a positive, punctuation marks like a colon or dash signal and a positive. Modification is words like which, who, or where. Restatement clues are phrases like or, in other words, often with a similar sentence structure. For cause and effect, students can look for words such as because, so, since, therefore, or thus. Next is words in series. Example for this type is the conjunction and. Reference it is words like it, this, or that. Association is the patterns, like verb plus noun or adjective plus noun. Example clues are phrases such as for example or such as. Moving on, which vocabulary should teachers focus on when teaching students how to deduce meaning from context? Strategies for deducing meaning are especially helpful for tackling mid-frequency and low-frequency words in a language. Given the vast number of these words, teachers can't possibly cover them all in class. However, students need to continue learning these words, and strategies are crucial for helping them do so. Regardless of how much vocabulary a learner already knows, there will always be unfamiliar words. Employing these strategies gives students a way to manage and understand those unknown terms. When students receive training in guessing meanings from context, it's best for them to work with texts in which at least 95% of the words are ones they already know. This familiarity allows them to access the clues present in the text. Furthermore, the words selected for this guessing practice should actually have enough context clues to be decipherable. For example, adjectives are often challenging to guess because they don't interact much with other words, whereas nouns and verbs typically provide more clues and are easier to infer. Next, let's address the question, how should deducing meaning from context be taught? The best way to teach the use of context clues is through explicit instruction. This involves the teacher modeling the process, using familiar written examples, and offering support as students become more skilled in contextual analysis. Modeling means that the teacher verbalizes their thought process, explaining how to apply context clues while guiding students in their reading attempts. Engaging students in class discussions about how they derive word meanings from context and what to do when context doesn't help can deepen their understanding of both the advantages and limitations of this approach. Greenwood and Flanagan, 2007. According to Nation, 2013, there isn't a single method for guessing meanings from context. However, most methods rely on similar types of clues. Some strategies take an inductive approach to arrive at a guess, while others are deductive, working backward to validate the guess. The deductive approach is particularly suitable for younger learners who may not analyze as deeply, as well as for advanced learners who are already familiar with various clues and want to enhance their fluency in guessing. On the other hand, the inductive approach, like the one outlined by Clark and Nation in 1980, helps learners recognize the variety of available clues and develop the necessary sub-skills to utilize them effectively. The primary goal of all guessing strategies is to enable learners to guess fluently and skillfully from context so that their guessing does not disrupt the flow of their reading. Starting with the inductive approach, there are 5 main steps. First, identify the part of speech of the unknown word. Second, examine the immediate context, simplifying it grammatically if needed. Third, look at the broader context, considering how the word relates to nearby sentences or clauses. Fourth, make a guess about the word's meaning. Finally, check your guess by ensuring it matches the part of speech of the unknown word. Substitute your guess into the sentence and see if it fits smoothly within the context. Additionally, break the unknown word into its components and see if the meanings of those parts support your guess. If necessary, look up the word in the dictionary. The deductive approach follows a different sequence. First, guess the meaning of the word. Next, justify your guess using various clues. Lastly, adjust your guess as needed. Regardless of which approach learners prefer, they don't need to adhere to a strict procedure when guessing. Instead, they should be aware of the various clues available and have the skills to utilize them effectively. Let's move to the last part of the video today: common misconceptions about vocabulary, pre-teaching, and deducing meaning from context. Many teachers operate under the misconception that all vocabulary needs to be pre-taught. They may believe that every unfamiliar word should be explicitly explained before students begin reading. However, students often have the ability to deduce meanings from context, meaning that not every unknown word is crucial for grasping the overall message of a text. Another common belief is that pre-teaching vocabulary is always necessary. Some educators think that vocabulary must be taught beforehand for every text. In reality, students can frequently learn new words more effectively through context during reading, especially when they are equipped with strategies for doing so. There is also a misconception that students must know all the words they are trying to deduce the meaning of. When selecting vocabulary for lessons focused on deducing meaning from context, teachers often choose familiar words that students have previously encountered. This allows them to identify the correct meaning later on. However, the emphasis of deducing meaning instruction should be on the process rather than the final product. If students already know the meanings of the words, the process of deduction will not take place. Another misunderstanding is that students fulfill the objectives of deducing meaning from context when they can recite all meanings of the target words. In truth, students should only be expected to identify the meaning that is relevant to the specific context. Particularly for younger students, it is not necessary for them to recognize every nuance in meaning derived from context clues. Lastly, some teachers feel compelled to teach all the words highlighted in the textbook. Instead, they should make thoughtful decisions about which words to focus on based on students' familiarity with the words and the availability of both external and internal clues that can aid in understanding. Thank you for joining us for this training session. We hope you found the information valuable and insightful. Happy learning and see you next time.